Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Real Estate. I'm your host, Anthony Gilio of Remax Legacy here in Woburn. And today, as my guest, is Scott Harden from the Appraiser Guy, also here in Woburn. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
We're excited to have you because of your knowledge of what our topic is today. Yeah. And our topic is on appraisals and more specifically, understanding appraisals.
Yeah.
Scott, I invited you here because you are the owner of the Appraiser Guy, but also because of your excitement level over appraisals, which to most of us, it's not really that exciting.
Yes.
Scott, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into the appraisal business.
Sure. I stumbled across it, didn't really intend to go to school and learn about appraising, but had a good friend that was into appraising, and I kind of just stumbled into it. And it was a perfect job for me because I got to spend time in an office, but not all my time in the office. I was able to go out on the road and travel, and I enjoy architecture, so I got to see various styles of houses and condominium projects and multifamilies, and it just worked.
I would assume that similar to real estate, appraisals is always changing, and there's so much, not every day is the same.
Yeah.
So every day you wake up and there's a new challenge to tackle, and that's what's so great about what we do.
Yeah.
Is that we never have the same day every week, and it's always changing.
Yeah.
For our audience, can you explain a little bit about what is an appraisal?
Sure.
Because there is so many myths about appraisals, but also they get mixed up with assessment versus market analysis versus appraisals. But I was hoping you could maybe go into a little more detail on appraisals.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the appraisal process primarily is done for the banks. If you're going to refinance your home or you're going to purchase a home and you don't have the full cash to buy it in cash, you need to create a mortgage. And so the bank needs us to verify the value of that property. And that's what the appraisers typically do. And that process is relatively, the strength of the appraisal is primarily in comparable sales. So the appraisal process, actually, there's 3 of them within every report, and most people don't know that.
What are those 3?
Absolutely. The 3 appraisal processes are the sales comparison approach, which everybody knows is comparable properties that have sold. And those comparable properties are comparable by location, which is first. I mean, you know that. Mm-hmm. Location, location, location.
Sure.
Age, style, GLA, the living area, which is a gross living area of the property, bedroom count, bathroom count, and condition. Mm-hmm. And so you want to have sales that are similar. Same neighborhood, mm-hmm. Same. If it's a colonial, you really want to have colonials. Same year built, you'd rather have, if it's a 10-year-old colonial, you'd want to have something pretty close to 10 years old. And then you kind of adjust, you make some of the minor adjustments on the appraisal, and then it kind of gives you a range, a high range and a low range, and the appraiser determines at that point what his opinion is for the value within that range. The other process is called an income approach. So if you have a single family and you want to rent it, and you want to find out if you're going to be able to cover the cost of the mortgage if you rented it, that would be part of the income approach. If you have a multifamily, the banks also look at the income approach to also support the value of the note that they are lending on the property. So it's pretty simple. You find similar properties, same situation. You have to find rental properties that are similar to your property. And then you extract the rental data from that. If it's rented at $1,800 a month or $900 a month, you want to have similar properties that are in that range that support the income. And then the final approach, which most people actually don't know about, is the cost approach, which is primarily for insurance purposes. The insurance company wants to know if your house that you just purchased burns down for some reason, God forbid that were to happen. Mm-hmm. What would it cost to rebuild that home from scratch, to put it exactly the way it was? That's the cost approach. Builders often use that. So if they're about to buy a property, and you'll see this in certain towns. Hasn't happened too much in Woburn with what they call mansionization, where they'll take a small cape or a ranch on a small postage lot, tear it down, and then build a McMansion on there. You know, they want to know the cost approach.
Right.
You know, how much is it going to cost me to buy that land, tear down the property, and then build a new property? Am I going to be able to sell it and recoup my cost plus gain profit? So that's the cost approach.
So you use all three of these approaches in an appraisal?
Yep, if needed.
Okay, because I know there's a lot of confusion in the real estate industry, not with realtors, but with just the general public who are looking to sell their home. Oftentimes we'll get a phone call that says, I'd like to have an appraisal done on my home.
Yeah.
And I have to sort of explain that, you know, we don't do appraisals, we do what's called a market analysis.
Right.
And on a market analysis, all we really use is comparable approach, the
Yeah.
comparable properties.
Yeah.
And as best we can, we look at your neighbor's house across the street or a comparable property down the street to say, okay, well, that house sold for X amount of dollars. Your house is very similar, and we adjust it based on, you know, number of bedrooms or bathrooms or condition, location, things like that.
Right.
But what we don't do is the sales approach and the income approach.
Right.
And those can be very important factors because comparable properties, although it's most of the time accurate, a lot of times the income and sales could change the value of the home.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely, that's very true. You guys always do a pretty good job. I mean that is your job as a realtor.
We are what they call we're professionals, you know. So we're trained to do that.
Yeah.
Some are better than others, but yes, we, with all the tools and resources available to us as real estate agents today, it's not as difficult to kind of get a more accurate a reading. However, in this real estate market that we're experiencing, and you've probably seen it, it is kind of a little crazy and out of control. You think you know the value of a home, and then it sells for way over what we're asking for it,
Yeah.
and that's because of the problem of not enough inventory and surplus of buyers.
Yeah.
And my question, I guess, with that is, we run into a lot of appraisal issues in this type of market where you have low inventory and high surplus,
Yeah.
supply and demand. So how do you tackle that problem? Because if you look at all the approaches that you mentioned, you could say a home is worth only this, but you have 3 or 4 other buyers willing to pay 20, 30, 40,000 over what that is. How do you justify and reconcile that difference?
Yeah, I want to answer that question, but you brought up something first that I want to go back to before I answer that question. You know, realtors sometimes are really good, like you are very good at helping your clients understand the value of the property, what they should sell it for, or what they should buy it for. But sometimes that's not the case. You know, I've run into situations where realtors, you know, like this situation, someone wants to buy it, we go to the property, but clearly there's such a huge divide between what the property's actually worth and what someone wants to buy it. And that's where you have a struggle, where there's a difference in the realtor that you're using that's representing you as a buyer or a seller. So I just wanted to mention that because that's a key component
Sure.
to what we face. Most times there's a market influence, like you were talking about, the supply and demand.
Right.
Supply is low, like it is currently, and like it was this time last spring.
Right.
Demand is very high. People are wanting to buy. So what that does is it creates an inflation in value. People are willing to buy more and spend more on a property than it necessarily would be worth. However, here's the catch. The appraisal only defines market value. So market value is defined by what somebody's willing to pay for a property.
Right.
So it gets really complicated in that realm.
Sure.
If somebody who's in the open market wants to buy a property for $500,000 and currently it's only worth $450,000, well, that person's actually defining the market.
Correct.
But the bank still wants to know, are they just odd and want to spend more on a property than it's worth?
Right.
Or is there actual, you know, truth that this value and what's happening in the market is going to support the $500,000 cost?
So as an appraiser, are you then able to say, okay, well, I'm only seeing a $450,000 valuation, but I know that you want to buy it for 500.
Yeah.
And I also know that there were other offers that were over the 450. So therefore, I can conclude that maybe it is really worth 500 now. Or is that not allowed?
Well, it'd be great if it were that easy, right?
Well, I was hoping it was that
It's
easy.
not
And if
that
it's
easy.
not, I'm kind of directing you that that's how it should be.
If I could change Washington, I would, because it'd make everyone's life
Sure.
more easy. But
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, it's not. We do have to do a lot more work. And here's where it breaks down, right?
Okay.
Your typical appraisal fee is about $350. And most appraisers right now actually aren't even seeing that full fee because Washington made some changes that require most companies to go through an AMC, an appraisal management company. They now take a portion of the fee and then give the remainder of that to an appraiser. So the appraiser is usually seen somewhere between $250 to $300, which is significantly lower. I mean, those are the values that we were getting back, 10
Sure.
years ago. So they don't want to do more work for less money.
Right.
So that's where it's kind of an issue. We don't do that, and my appraisers don't do that. We know that sometimes we're going to have hard files and hard appraisals that we need to do more work on, but we have to. I mean, we have to. We're representing ourselves, and we're representing the industry for appraisers. So we have to produce something that's accurate, even if it takes longer. Even if we don't make as much money in the end on this one deal, we have to do the harder work. To find, going back to your original question, to find value, if someone's willing to buy that property at 500, it's a whole different slew of information that the appraiser has to find out. They have to look at, like you were saying, offers are only offers. It doesn't define the market, right?
Right.
It might help that this property was in a bidding war. There were other 5 offers that were all within the same range, but that still is not. The bank is not going to look at that as being substantial. We have to look at days on market to see if things are going relatively quickly, less than 15 days, less than 30 days on the market. We have to find a consistency in the market that everything is selling over asking price.
Right.
So there's a lot more market research involved.
Do you ever use pending sales as a kind of as a jumping off point when there are no comparable sales? Because as we know in real estate, the market changes nightly sometimes. You wake up one day and it's a aggressive market, and the sales that happened, say, last month are going to be a whole lot lower than the sales that are going to occur this month because the market has improved rapidly.
Yeah.
So can you extrapolate, I guess the word would be, from pending sales to project what the value of this pending sale is?
Yeah, absolutely, you can. But the hard thing is we're not allowed to know what that under agreement price is.
Right.
Right. So it could have listed at $449, but it could be under agreement for $499. Right.
Correct.
We can't know what the weight and value of that pending sale is. We do use those, but one thing we can use is the market history on that property.
Right. Days on market, how quickly it came off the market. The assumption is if it's less than a week, it probably went either close or above asking price.
Yeah, most of the time above.
Right.
And again, what we were talking about before, extracting the information from other sales and the days, correlating days on market with above asking price, you can kind of gauge at that point and assume that this pending sale is going to be above the asking price.
So we know a little more about appraisals.
Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned that lenders have you come and do appraisals, but can a homeowner call an appraiser up and say, I want to know the exact value of my home? Can they call, say, you and do that?
Absolutely. We have homeowners do that all the time.
What would be the reasons why a homeowner would want an appraisal?
There's several reasons. One is maybe they do want to have an independent view of what their house is worth prior to listing it on the market, right? That might be a big concern. They totally trust you, but they also just want to have something independent.
Sure.
We see that quite often, and we'll do a quick valuation. We do a reduced valuation process for a homeowner than we do for a lender. Right. Lenders require a significant more forms involved. So it's a little bit more affordable for a homeowner to, get an appraisal done. The other reasons would be perhaps someone's looking to improve their property. They want to do an addition, maybe do a brand new kitchen. Before, and I tell homeowners this all the time, before you invest $50,000, $75,000, $100,000 into your house, take a time out, find out if you're going to get that money back.
Right.
You could be over improving your property. I saved a family from making this error. They were going to put in $75,000 into their house in Tingsboro, and he called me right before he started the process and said, do you think this is a good choice? I went through and I looked and I said, you are going to only get $25,000 back in value.
Right.
I said, the best option for you, if you want to move closer to your work and reduce your commute, move to Wilmington, and you can buy a house and still improve it and be way better off.
Right.
He did that. He improved it. They have now, since that date, just earned $50,000 in equity, just because the market has increased. So that's the type of stuff that people would want to have us come in for.
Your advice was sort of valuable in this situation.
Very valuable.
So as realtors, we see that all the time.
Yeah.
We go into a seller's home and they say, we give them a price of what we think it's going to sell for. And they say, but I just put $75,000 into this kitchen.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, yes, the kitchen's nice, but you could probably have done the kitchen for $30,000 and still, we'd still come out at the same price.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they overvalue the improvements that they've done on the home.
Yeah.
And so an appraiser, it's nice to have that unbiased opinion.
Yeah.
Because the home process and home selling is very emotional. Sellers are very attached to the home, and rightfully so. They've lived so long in there. They've built so many memories.
Yeah.
And what we call, flaws and defects, they will call character.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's very important to, seek that unbiased opinion through an appraisal to say, okay, if I'm going to do this and spend X amount of dollars, I will see the value in return.
Yep.
So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. Another process, just to finish up on that, if someone unfortunately passes in the family, typically for taxation purposes, you need to have a date of death appraisal. Actually, I just completed one this morning where unfortunately, an elderly couple, the husband passed away. For taxation purposes, she needed to have an appraisal done on the property as of the effective date of the date of death.
Sure.
So that's another reason that you would need one. If you want to create an estate on your home, right? So we work with estate attorneys. You would want to have a valuation done on your property so that you can tie that estate now into a trust to protect yourself from, there's various reasons why you would want to do that. You could, tax savings, and also help out your kids so that by the time that you need to move on, that's a tax shelter, and your kids are getting the most out of the property that you've cherished for years and you've grown and raised your family in.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you ever find, and I've seen this, often, where a family member is going to sell to another family member or to a close friend, and they agree on a price, but wouldn't you think and advise them to get an appraisal first to actually know what the value is? Because if they're really leaning on their own knowledge, they might be underselling their home.
Yeah.
And sometimes the point isn't necessarily to give a discount to their friend, but just to sell it in, to help them out. But also, they want to be able to get the maximum value. And an appraisal is probably the best way to say, okay, let's agree on the price based on an official appraisal.
Yeah, and actually I'm doing that again, another one where I'm doing that, working with the family. It's co-owned with two sisters, and there is, they want to give each other a gift of equity, which means that they're not going to charge the other for the full value. They're going to give a gift of equity to reduce the price just because they're family members. But they still want to know at the end of the day, how much is this property worth at this day of the transaction?
Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
So a homeowner wants to get an appraisal.
Yeah.
What are some things they can do to prepare for that appraisal?
That's a good question.
Because sometimes, by moving some things around or doing certain things, not that we can influence the appraisal. But yes, we can influence the appraisal to be a higher value.
You're-
There, I said it. We trick you
Yeah.
into thinking the home is worth more.
No,
So
you're not tricking
what
anybody.
are the tricks or the things that a homeowner can do to prepare for an appraisal?
Well, okay, so it's a great question. It's a great question. But you have to, we're competing with you as a listing agent that put professional photos on their listings on MLS, right? So we're using MLS primarily to determine the value. With MLS, we can see inside with photos the condition of the property. So if you're going to get that property prior to listing on the market in tip-top shape, right, looking, shining beautifully, having a professional photographer come in there, then probably you want to have that as much as possible as a homeowner. You want to have your house look as tidy as possible because we're competing with these MLS, photos that are
Sure.
beautiful, So tidying up, cleaning up, it's not necessary, but it definitely helps the appraiser understand the condition and see the condition.
And that's a good point. That's something that's often overlooked. Is the pictures is the most they feel is the most important part, and it's very important because pictures worth 1,000 words, and people aren't going to come to see your home normally if the pictures aren't enticing enough. But they throw everything in a closet and hide everything in cabinets, and then the pictures are done and everything goes back to the way it is. The appraiser comes in and says, this looks nothing like the pictures, and then might have a negative impact on the value because of that.
Yeah, and that's key for your and on the selling side for your clients. It's key that they understand that it needs to be very close to the same shape because the bank wants to see it. They see the photographs, and the underwriters now as well. So there's no, 10 years ago. Basically, the banks just fully took the word of the appraiser, right? Nobody else double checked anything. They didn't have the available resources to. Now with MLS and the available resources, underwriters can actually go into the listings, see the photos, so they're comparing as well. So it's no longer just the appraisers.
It's more highly scrutinized now,
Right.
and there's a lot more checks and balances.
Right. Yeah.
How do you combat a low appraisal?
Yeah.
Let's say you're trying to sell your home, the appraisal happens and comes in at a lower value, and now you're in jeopardy of losing that sale.
Yeah.
What are some things that you can do to combat that?
Yeah, you can. And remember, the biggest thing on the appraisal is it's an opinion. An appraisal is an opinion, right? So some opinions are right, some opinions are maybe off. So every homeowner has the right to, to question that opinion. And if they feel that it's off, then you just need to do some homework and provide some proof as to why it's off. Oftentimes we have that. Not often, because we usually get the value right.
Of course you do.
But sometimes...
You don't want to tell the world that your system is flawed, Scott.
But sometimes the value isn't correct.
Sure.
It's a little off. The appraiser might have missed some things that are more comparable on a property. Or maybe there are some private sales that occurred off of MLS that need to be recognized and are similar. So you just literally provide a list of why these sales could be more comparable than the sales that the appraiser used.
So a seller could then, if they see an appraisal that they don't agree with, can go back and submit something to the appraiser to make their case.
Yeah, they can submit it. The proper channels on a purchase would be that they'd have to submit it to the lender, and the lender would then in turn be required to submit it to the appraiser.
Okay. I want to bring up one last thing about appraisals before our time is up, and that's in regards to pulling permits in a home.
Oh yeah.
A lot of this whole new television about do it yourself, and I don't know if they focus so much on pulling permits. And a lot of people are very handy. I dabble in the handy stuff once in a while, but pulling permits is a very crucial part of selling a home, but also the appraisal. And can you speak to how maybe pulling a permit could save you?
Absolutely. Here's why you need to pull the permit, right? I get it. Like, everybody wants to save money. They don't want to have their assessments go higher and be taxed higher. So I completely understand that. In the short term, that's great until you need to sell your property. That's when you're going to get burned. Because right now, this is what's going on, and we're seeing this all the time, like all the time. Homeowner 5 years ago improved their property, added a half bathroom when they gutted the kitchen, put in a brand new kitchen, and also added a bedroom, converted some areas in there and created a bedroom. So now we go and we're looking at the assessment record, and it shows 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and no updates at all. And then we go to the property and it's fully updated, 4 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms. So we want to give you value, right, for the improvements, and we have to cite what is there. And you want us to, because you need the value if you're selling it. We state, please note, the subject has been improved with a gutted kitchen, brand new half bath, and additional bedroom. The underwriter is then going to say, okay, we see the value, it's supportable, please provide us the permits for the work completed. Please note, homeowner did not pull permits.
Right.
Underwriter says, cannot loan on this property, it is illegally renovated.
Right.
Boom, deal's done.
You just
Deal
lost
is done, you lost everything.
that buyer that was willing to pay you $50,000 more than what your home was worth.
Now, here's even the challenge. You want to sell it, you're eventually going to need to sell the property. So what's your option? You have to go back to the building inspector, humbly plead for his mercy or her mercy to allow you to have them come in. They might have you open up some walls, might have you open up some floors to verify that the plumbing, electric, everything is done correctly, and they'll sign off on it, and you'll pay way more in the end.
Sometimes they may even have you take everything out and start from scratch.
Yeah.
Just depends.
Yeah, which is even obviously way more expensive.
So in your professional advice, you would suggest that people pull
permits? The permits. You're talking about maybe $100, over 5 years, let's say, at most, $500 over 10 years. Pay for it, because you're going to need it. And you want your house to be worth as much as it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The last topic I want to cover or ask you about, and it's really hot in this market, is with the recent floodplain maps and changes.
Yeah.
And some people are now considered in flood zones, and how that affects property value.
Yeah.
Could you speak to a little bit about that and some of the struggles that you are finding with that?
Absolutely. I mean, going back again to what we were talking about, location, right? Location is the most important process of a property. And so when you're located, most people want to be located near the water, and those properties are valued higher typically. So the great thing is you live next to the water, you have a great location. Recently now, they just changed all of the flood maps. So you might not have been located in a flood zone before, but now you are, because so much flooding is occurring. FEMA had to reissue all new flood maps. What that means for you is, as a homeowner, it could potentially be thousands of more for you to get flood insurance. Right. And I mean thousands. Like, it has absolutely leaped to the point where people are like, I'm taking the risk, I'm not going to get flood insurance. Right. And lo and behold, 5 years later, we have a storm, and there's a storm surge, and you're out. I mean, at that point, you literally are out. So very difficult. Boston, down in Boston specifically, that whole area, the seaport area that they've just been developing, that was not in a flood zone. Now it's fully in a flood zone. A lot of the Back Bay wasn't in a flood zone. Now it's fully in a flood zone. So that impacts the homeowners. If you're in a condo, you might think that you're safe, right? From paying homeowners or flood insurance.
It's not true.
Not true. You could be located on the 5th floor, and no chance that a storm surge is going to reach you. But your project, the condo project, is located in a flood zone, so you're still going to be required. It's interesting
you bring that up, because I just had that personally, where a client of mine was buying a condo in Melrose.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't think Melrose is in a high flood area, but the condo association building was actually touching on a flood area, and they needed flood insurance. Ultimately, the buyers weren't comfortable with that and decided to walk away because they didn't want the possibility of flooding to occur.
Yeah.
So it's a real hot issue right now, and because everyone, all the flood maps changed, people bought their homes, they weren't in a flood zone, and now all of a sudden they're categorized being in a flood zone,
Yeah.
the property values probably decreased because of that,
Yeah.
and could impact appraisals.
The other thing that a homeowner can do to combat that, you know, some homes you go into and you're like, there's no water even near this. Within 1,000 yards, there's no water. Why am I in a flood zone? Because of the neighborhood and the settling, there's things that a homeowner can do to prevent that, because that will come up, that the property is in a flood zone. You have to disclose that. You can put in a French drain. You know, a French drain system allows the property in the basement to stay dry and pumps out the water. So those are some of the things that you can, as a potential seller, do to help a potential buyer feel at ease about buying the property.
It's a good suggestion, and you know, we could spend hours on flood zones, but our time is up.
Oh, already.
So I appreciate you being here and imparting to us your knowledge about appraisals. I know that I know more about appraisals because, you know, I didn't necessarily know all the details behind it. And if you at home, you want more information on the appraisal process, feel free to contact Scott Harden of the Appraiser Guy here in Woburn, Massachusetts. Thank you, Scott, for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And we hope to see you out and about.
All right, take care.
All right. I'm Anthony Gilio. Thank you for tuning in today, and we'll see you on the next episode.